Hello, everyone. Although we're entering the new normal, we still have to deal with old COVID. So I had hoped to see you in person, but we have to do it via Zoom. So thank you for your patience and your understanding and the occasional brain fog. I'm going to share my screen. So as Joe said, my name is Daniel Lutz. And what I'd like to talk to you about this afternoon is why, in the new normal, becoming an artist is more important than ever. Indeed, I would say that your very happiness might depend on it. Years ago, I did my education degree in a new specialty program called Artists in the Community. And then more or less set it aside for the next few decades as I worked as a communication strategist in the private sector and UN agencies. And for virtually none of the hundreds of projects that I've worked on would I ever have considered myself as an artist in the community. And yet, what I'm arguing for now is exactly that. I think we need to become artists in our communities, even as AI is threatening the livelihood of some artists. And it is precisely because of the new normal. I unfortunately missed it this morning, but I believe Donald Hall spoke this morning on in the new normal, there is no new normal. No matter how we look at it, we are in for an extended period of instability. And this is a problem because as a species, we're not very good with change. We're wired to resist it. We're wired to fear it. I mean, that's where tradition comes from. If we do something and it doesn't kill us, let's do more of it because something else might. We're technologically advanced, but we're biologically primitive. The reason new and improved works as a marketing technique is because it's the right level of change. New and improved triggers on a very low level our fear factor. It releases a tiny bit of adrenaline, creating excitement and interest in the product, but not enough to trigger our fear response. So the right level of new is exciting. The wrong level of new, however, too much change, that creates fear, anxiety, depression, and helplessness. And my antidote, I'm suggesting, become an artist. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a whole set of brushes or install a kiln in your backyard. You don't have to dress outrageously or say ridiculous things in public, although why not? But if you want to become okay with the period of gross uncertainty that we're about to enter, then the mindset of an artist offers hope. So I'm going to share with you 6 characteristics of artists and argue that these 6 characteristics will make you more adaptive, happier, and if that's not enough, also infinitely more impactful. Sorry, I'm dry as anything. You probably recognize these films as Steven Spielberg. He's not only a brilliant director, but also his films cross all genres: family, war, science fiction, Western, musical. So the first characteristic of artists is they actively seek out novel experiences. Picasso had his blue period, his rose period, primitivism, cubism. Lady Gaga was famous for her extravagant costumes and outrageous concerts, but then surprised many with a very toned down performance as Ali in A Star is Born. These artists, rather than avoiding change, they seek it out and embrace it. Now, change not only feeds their work, but also, as we now know, it feeds their neural connections. New experiences increase our neuroplasticity, which in turn enhances our empathy and creativity. And for the future, we're going to need both of those in abundance. Now, Of course, you can't regularly seek out new experiences if you don't have this next characteristic. Artists make friends with discomfort. Now, we all do things to avoid pain and discomfort. Whole industries are based on them: foods, drugs, sex, travel. Our mobile phones is possibly the biggest one. Nir Eyal, a behavioral specialist, goes even further and says, look, everything we do, literally everything we do to escape comfort. It's our fundamental driver. And yet, the best artists seek it out. They understand the nourishing aspect of discomfort and its caloric content for creativity. In this image on the screen, you have Marina Abramovich. She's on the receiving end of the arrow, and she was famous for putting herself and her audience in dramatically uncomfortable situations. She wrote, once you enter into the performance state, you can push your body to do things you absolutely could never normally do. John Cleese from Monty Python also stumbled upon the importance of the ability to handle discomfort in another way. Many years ago, he was contemplating on why he tended to come up with better ideas and concepts than a Monty Python colleague of his, who he felt was more clever than he was. And he realized it's because his more clever colleague tended to come up with ideas immediately, whereas Cleese, played with him a little bit, held them a little longer, and explored them more deeply. And it's something that Donald McKinnon, the researcher on creativity, also echoed in his findings. He said the best creative professionals play with problems much longer before they try to resolve them. Einstein also said, it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. You see, problems create discomfort, and then we attempt to rectify that by coming up with solutions. And most of us are willing to compromise on the quality of the solution if it means solving it more quickly. But staying with the problem longer and staying with the discomfort increases the chance that the solution you come up with will be a good one. As a calm strategist, creating enough time up front to properly explore the problem, I've discovered, is crucial, because otherwise you run the risk of jumping to the wrong conclusion and solving the wrong problem and not finding the right framing. In fact, at the beginning of most projects, especially ones involving anything to do with culture, I tell clients upfront, if this doesn't feel uncomfortable, we're not reaching far enough, because the best solutions will require the willingness to endure discomfort. Now, we all break rules occasionally, but artists are willing to break the big ones, the societal ones, the ones governing the way things should be. Through a combination of imagination and courage, artists offer us a glimpse of another reality. Pictured here is Frida Kahlo in the middle. Now, she challenged the norms of society on a number of fronts, not just by wearing men's clothing. And it reminded me of a well-known quote that's going around right now: well-behaved women seldom make history. Artists break rules. But it's not easy to make waves. It's not easy to shake the status quo. But for the challenge facing us in the new normal, we need rule breakers. And in the past, when times were good and systems stable, artists could play the role of entertainer and life enhancer. But when times are turbulent and systems unstable in the new normal, those with an artist's vision are the ones that offer us a path forward. The fourth characteristic of artists is that they make things and discard them, and they're okay with mistakes. Because you can't continuously seek out the new if you're not willing to at least let go of some of the old. And not doing so very quickly leads to an unsustainable level of complexity. It's the number one problem I have when I go into organizations. they'll come up with a new process, but they'll add it to the old. They'll have one document requirement that then balloons into 4. And the problem is, one of the positive things about the new normal is we are entering a phase with a possibility for an unprecedented level of innovation. We're a more connected world than ever before. We have the ability to create non-material things digitally. We have the ability to create material things through 3D printing. And we have computer-assisted augmentation through apps or soon bioimplants, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence. But that innovation is not going to do us any good if we keep holding on to the past, if we keep holding on to the old. We're not going to be able to embrace that better new, that different new. So in the new normal, unlearning becomes as important as learning. It's the willingness to paint over the canvas and start again. This is an art installation by Sun Yoon and Pen Yu called Can't Help Myself. Now, this contraption was designed to leak oil. And the oil, I don't know if you can see here, but it is colored red. And it leaks oil continuously and is required to mop it up to keep on functioning. But it loses a little bit of oil each time. So over the lifetime of this installation, it gradually leaks out oil to the point that it doesn't have enough oil to function anymore, and it stops. And this is the 5th characteristic. Artists embrace complexity simply. For me, this was, I don't know if you can tell here, but this was if you stayed and watched it for a longer period of time, was quite a evocative installation for capturing the essence of anything that is alive and the ultimate futility of it. And good artists are good at capturing the essence of something. They ask themselves, how can I distill whatever into something representable, understandable, and shareable? And when I walk into organizations, they need more artistic thinking. Not how can we put better art on the wall, but how can we have people who can look at the whole and distill it down into something comprehensible? And not just comprehensible, also meaningful. The best artists understand that it's important to reach us emotionally before you can reach us and impact us cognitively. So if we focus on the complexity, we become paralyzed. One of my tenets is that complexity is not actionable. On an individual level, you see that when someone tries to change something in their life as an individual all at once, they end up changing nothing. In an organization undergoing a change transformation, they usually end up with 15 core guidelines mapped to a 3D model of excellence, annexed by 9 pages of organizational policy, all of which are supposed to work seamlessly together. And in terms of capturing the essence of the whole, it's one of the things we do well. It's one of the things we can do, and for instance, AI can't. In a Wired article on artificial intelligence, the author wrote, a chat box drafts answers taken token by token to predict the next word in a response. But humans open their mouths to express fully formed ideas. Taking complex ideas and transforming them into something immediately understandable and shareable is an immensely creative act and skill, crucial in a world becoming increasingly complex at an ever-increasing rate. And here, the quality is not very good, but it's a street musician jamming with a pigeon who's dancing exactly to the beat of the song. And it was a good illustration, at least for me, of the last principle, which is artists have low expectations, actually no expectations. Because this leaves room for play, for fun, for improv and discovery. As a street musician, you have no idea what's going to come at you every day. You know, they cultivate an attitude of, we'll see what happens. I have an artist friend who, before she goes to paint, has no idea what she's going to paint. What she ends up with at the end of the day is as much a surprise to her as to anybody. And no matter what, the new normal is going to be crazy. It's pretty much anyone's guess what's down the road. So cultivating an attitude of no expectations is both positive and practical. If you have a neutral stance, you're going to be able to respond creatively to whatever challenges or opportunities present themselves. Now, when I was distracting myself from finishing this talk, I came across an article by a woman on talking about Bumble. Bumble is a dating app, and why she was not going to use it. And I had two thoughts when I read this. First of all, good for you for not giving up on love. But also her last sentence, as an artist, I need to smell, feel, and take in someone's presence. And I thought, that's true of everybody. And this last point is going to sound very trite, but we really are all artists. We all need this. We've just forgotten it or had it trained out of us. But in the weebly wobbly world of the new normal, I really believe that remembering we are artists is no longer a luxury, but an absolute necessity. So in good simplistic fashion, I've summed the 6 of these points up. Artists seek out new experiences. They make friends with discomfort. They break rules. They make things, then move on in a learn, unlearn, learn cycle. They embrace complexity simply, and they have low or no expectations, a state of neutrality. And I know that cynical is spelled with a C, but I needed 3 Ds and 3 S's, so I broke some rules. And my last thought is that quite a few years ago, nerds were scorned. Nobody wanted to be a nerd. They were the butt of everyone's joke. But now, anno 2023, they're the new cool. They're the wealthiest entrepreneurs on the planet. And wouldn't it be cool if in the new normal age of constant change, being called artsy, like nerdy a few decades ago, wasn't dismissive, but the highest compliment one could get? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Daniel. This is Donald Hall. Thank you for that really wonderful presentation. Again, we wish you good health. We do have maybe 5 minutes or a few minutes for a question or two from the audience. The audio, his audio is probably not going to pick up anything you say, so you might shout it out, and I might be able to relay it to him if you have a quick question or two. Joe? Several people have challenged you on the low or no expectations of artists, given the fact that, you know, some of us, whether we're artists or we're scholars or we're whatever, we have rather large egos. So could you say a little bit about that, a little bit more?
Yeah. And of course, these characteristics, I should say, are ideal states. You have many artists that have only a few or possibly none of these characteristics. But what I consider good artists, I think what I mean by like going into a project, you have ideas, but really across the board, whether it's music or theater or any kind of art, a state of neutrality at the beginning of a project opens you to whatever comes to you. So I don't, in terms of your question about, okay, artists or whoever with big egos, I would say the bigger your ego, the more that gets in the way of the art. So if you're able to park it, at least at the beginning of a project, your chances of making that project successful, whether that's a research project, an art project, or a cultural change project within an organization, is going to be much higher. One of the problems sorry?
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, ego is one of the, you're right. Big egos do get in the way, and big egos are responsible for many of the projects that fail.
But, and this will be the last question because we're about to take a short break and switch over. But where then is there a place if you have no or low expectations for art with a political edge, art that is meant to do something socially, culturally, politically, or are those at odds with each other?
No, not at all. And I realize maybe I wasn't clear. Like, no expectations is very different than not wanting to have impact. And having low or no expectations isn't the same as saying, oh, I don't want to have impact with this. It's that state of neutrality when you go into something, to be open to take it in whatever direction it needs to be taken. And for instance, if you want to have social impact, one of the things, for instance, in climate change projects, one of the things that's essential going into it is to really be open to what's really going to move people. Because if you start a project with too many expectations, there's a very, very good chance you're going to fail with that project. So it's not about not wanting to have impact. At some point, yes, you do have expectations and desires and wants. It's about starting a project with an openness and a neutrality.
Well, on those words, and that was very helpful. Thank you. Let's thank Daniel and wish him good health. And we wish you were here. Yeah,
I wish I was there too. I really regret not being able to see you in person and shake some hands. So I wish you all the best, and hope to see you at some point in the future.